shirts in the bottom.
Oh, I just took a.
Oh,
Okay, Micayla.
oh, is the Facebook on? Oh, it's
I told
live for
you.
8 seconds.
Yeah, we're good. Oh, Shanti, I just took a photo. What's happening here? What? Starting live video.
Woo.
All right, I think we're all.
We're waiting for the main human.
Oh, Shanti's the main human. Is
No,
everyone
you're
on?
blocking me.
Are they all on?
Yeah, I think they're all on.
1, 2,
Live. Everything's just live. I think we're good.
Woo! Oh,
Well, baby.
Queen.
Woo!
Welcome to Wildhearts Podcast.
We have our new microphone.
Episode 15 with Shanti Scott.
Yay.
I just wanted to do that. Feels so good. Thank you guys for the mic again. We too, and it does work.
Oh, Sean fixed that.
Oh.
Quick little.
How do I do that?
Just hold
Sorry, folks.
Okay.
Again, we'll just remind everyone that technical skills are not
I
the
just
best.
put my phone on. I did forget to put my phone on. Don't disturb me.
Let's go. We'll be starting.
I'll be good. I'll be good. It's all good.
Welcome, Shanti. How are you?
Yay! Fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I just want to start off because this is the first time I've noticed your amazing earrings. You've been for 25 minutes, I just noticed that. But they're really awesome. There's no way they're from this country, are they?
They're not. They're from South Africa.
I guess
I got them this summer.
this is so great.
Shameless plug.
They're so bright on this foggy, snowy day.
Indeed.
Is it snowing?
Yeah.
No, not anymore.
Remember when I just want to tell a story because I heard the story that you thought there was going to be a bazillion
I did.
of snow, so you drove here last night.
Yep. I was ready and prepared. Didn't want to be late.
I appreciate that. That's great. That's great preparation skills. I would have been like, oh crap, it's a blizzard. Better go fast.
So we are in a new place this week.
Yeah, actually, wow.
We are in a new place.
Where are we?
We're at Micayla and I Creative, which is very exciting. I want to turn all the things around and show everyone.
I know, I kind of do.
Maybe I will.
Here, I'll do them on parts. Okay, guys, real quick.
Well, everyone's seen it. You're just giving them a selfie of you. I'm not sure that was really.
No, I got the
a
maple
great
and the
representation,
no, that's
but
great.
That's cool. That's cool. Thank you for doing that. But new space, new mic.
New
Like a
day,
new
new
pants.
moment, every day.
Yeah,
New style.
Yeah.
There's a lot of newness
Plants
up in here.
on this.
This is great.
Cool. Well, before we introduce you for real, we'll just introduce ourselves for your people, and then we'll dive into it all.
Love it.
Yay.
Cool.
Cool. So my name is Micayla. I am co-host of Wildhearts Podcast. I am also owner and founder of Micayla Jean Photography. I work with mostly intimate, adventurous couples, as well as with a lot of women on the photography side of things, kind of empowerment. Portraiture is what I like to call it. And I host workshops, vulnerability workshops. We had a fantastic one last night with 10 amazingly beautiful, unique women. Can't say enough incredible things about those workshops. And my other business is Micayla and I Creative, which is where we are right now, photography studio and collaborative creative workspace. And I love it so much, and I'm so happy we're here right now. And we rent out the space to other photographers and creatives looking for a space to host a workshop, shoot a photography session, host a yoga class, whatever you need it for. Yeah,
It's my turn.
It's your turn.
All right, welcome everyone. My name is Sean Adam. I am the co-host, co-founder of Wildhearts Podcast. I also have an inspirational speaking business called Up and Adam Inspirational Speaking. That was founded based upon my journey with mental illness throughout my 20s and kind of traversing the really hard spaces that kind of put me in, and really making it through and kind of finding balance through a bunch of different tools and wanting to put that out into the world. And really, for me, it's more, especially for men, we're going through this huge transition in the world right now with toxic masculinity, and I'm actually really excited. So I have a book I was co-author with 36 other men in a book. It's called Guts, Grit, and the Grind. That's going to be coming out in May. And that book is designed to be, it's really designed as like almost like a car manual. So it's like all these different stories. So like, in the car, you're like, oh, the brakes are wrong. Go to page 27. This is how you fix it. That's the design of the book. So as part of that book, we just got accepted at the AAS, which is the American Association of Suicidology conference in Massachusetts for May 1st. We're going to be doing a speech on toxic masculinity and the book. And on top of that, I will be emceeing an event that just got launched yesterday with a couple of my friends, Rhea, Anthony of LA Beats, called Shape Your Luck. And they're going to really just share their stories, inspirational stories about how they've really created their own path. So that's March 23rd, 6 to 8 p.m. And I'll be MC. That's fun.
Cool.
Beautiful.
Yay.
Well, what's that?
Yeah. Tell the people who you are, Shanti.
If you hear the people sing. My name is Shanti. I'm 27 years old. I've been leading international youth exchanges with the company World Learning. And it started off with the experiment in international living, where I was able and really blessed to take 14 incredible students to South Africa, and then have been on a roll. I've gotten back and led 3 more since then, and in 2 weeks I'll set off to go on another one. So the youth exchanges, and I came out of working with youth in a plethora of different avenues. So I've worked in outdoor education, summer camp. I did a year of guiding as a wilderness therapy guide in Vermont. And most recently, the last year and a half, been working at a residential treatment center for adolescent boys in New Hampshire. So therapeutic, educational, wellness, vulnerability aligns pretty well.
Yeah, well, that's why you're here. That's why you're in this.
Yeah, so cool. So Shanti and I met back in college, her freshman year of college and my sophomore year.
Before college technically even started.
Yeah. Pre-orientation.
Adventure for Wildcats.
Is this for real?
So the reason that's important though to bring up is because it's been so cool. So we essentially led these like couple day to week, they weren't ever week long.
Yeah, it was
5 day long, kind of like camping trips in the woods of Mendham's Pond.
It's embarrassing.
And it's escalated thus far. So it started out really with the intention of being more of the pre-orientation.
Yeah.
New Hampshire Outing Club already had the more camping based one, and ours was really developed by Dave Zemansky. And
shout out to Dave. The best.
And there was a lot more geared, so we were able to do a day on campus, do a little scavenger hunt, and had panels come in from dining services, from Sharp, from admissions. And while we had the team building, went on a hike. I specifically remember going to Mount Major.
Yeah.
Did the hike, did canoeing, did orienteering.
Yeah. We learned how to use the compass.
Yes, we did. And yep. And
Canoeing.
there was, yes,
So many fun
team
things.
building, the whole, yeah.
That actually sounds pretty cool.
Oh, so
Oh, there you
fun.
go.
So fun.
Well, we're hooked because we took it. You were the first cohort ever, correct?
Yeah, I was in the first group. There was 18 of us. And I think by my super senior year, it was like, I think we had like 100 plus students.
Yeah, because I came in for the second cohort, and then you and I led it together for a few years.
Yeah.
Amazing. I'd say 80% of my best friends in life are from that program.
Yeah.
And I have some pause swag. I wore it over today.
Did you? Oh my god, yes.
Grab
I
it.
still have, Nate sent me one of, like literally in the mail this is like a couple years ago now, maybe 2 years ago. He sent me in the mail his old like pause shirt. He's like, it doesn't fit me anymore.
Please hold.
He was like, I feel like you should have it. It's honestly like my favorite shirt. Oh, you have the jacket. Oh my god, yes.
I spent New Year's Eve with Michael Quinlan, and this was in his
Cute.
it was in his closet. I was like,
Hey.
are you wearing that? He's like, you can have it. I was like, I'm a professional pause leader and just wrapping it
I remember
hardcore.
wearing a jacket.
I didn't get a jacket.
You did though.
It was
Wow.
the 2015 cohort.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Well, the reason that's like significant is because I feel like correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that was a really great like catapult for you and foundation for starting to kind of take you on this journey of what you're even doing today. I feel like last time I saw you, I was like, so you're basically a professional pause.
And we had a lot of the pause leaders had a thread on Facebook this summer that Dave started, just saying like, "Hey guys, we miss you," and then a bunch of us just started popping in and saying what we're doing, how much pause has impacted our life, and in that week and still on program, I lead Bunny, Toby, Toad, yes! And all of the different icebreaker team building games, like, and if my Brazilian students or my Caribbean students, or even I'm sure I did it with the Bolivian Peru group too.
Oh my god.
And we definitely did it in South Africa, like, Bunny, Toby. So yeah, sorry.
I have some deep insight here. Like, I'm just gonna throw some deep insight. I'm listening. So, what this is making me think of is that.
You wish you knew how to play Bunny, Toby,
No, but it's like, so, like, this type of work, who even knew this was a thing? First of all, not me. But it's so cool how, like, you started this experience and now you have created a life really based upon that experience, right? Like, perpetuating that into the world to get work out. Now, really where I want to go with this is that I think as we go through life, we have all these stories in our head about what's possible, but we live in this abundant universe where any reality you want to perpetuate is possible.
Mm-hmm.
It's just where are you willing to look? Because, like, I mean, even for myself, perfect example. I was at work the other day, and I was walking. One of the hostesses, her car, just wanted to say dear or whatever. She gave me a ride back, and there's like this new street in Portsmouth, and I've been in Portsmouth for 8 years. Never knew it was there. Showed me this like little short. I'm like, wow. And it's just like I had never seen that street, but it was there the whole time. You know what I mean? So it's just this kind of cool thing about finding like just be looking in different places and being able to create what you want. Because I've never heard of Togi, Maki, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But it's out there, and you can create that.
And it's true too, like how we were talking about this last night actually, how it's okay for what you do professionally as a career to change too and transform.
Hence the millennial generation. Yeah, we're gonna end up doing 6 bazillion different things by the time we retire.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's retired.
Well, I mean, talk about too, like all of, like the different kind of experiences you've had since you graduated too.
Yeah, even in college. So I worked at a farm-to-table cafe to start. So I graduated from the University of New Hampshire with a degree in women's studies and minors in nutrition and psychology. And I've always been really passionate and dedicated to health and wellness on a really holistic avenue. So really being able to touch upon all elements. And was able to, gosh, there's so much. Really, and additionally a big shift that like shifted and changed and got me, I think, to where I was I'm a part of an incredible all-women's Lakota Sundance ceremony out of Huntington, Vermont, and really, really blessed to even be invited and be a part of this community of the most powerful, strong activists. Just blows my mind every day and every time I get the chance to communicate with any of them. But I was invited and I had to make the choice to either stay in Newmarket. I had an apartment all lined up and I was going to live here after college ended, and I really wanted to attend this Sundance, and so I decided that I was going to move home, work at this cafe, which is Groton Wellness Cafe, and then did this ceremony, and that's led me basically since then. I've completely surrendered and found myself exactly where I need to be always, and that consistently is working with youth and in a social justice arena, and social justice, even just learning how to love yourself. And yeah, each position would funnel into the next one. My family jokes that they really don't know where I'm going or what I'm doing until the flights have been booked, and I can usually only plan maybe 3 months in advance. But it is, doing a summer at Camp Walt Whitman as a senior camp counselor, and then really recognizing that working with adolescent youth, specifically outside and in that interactive experiential, we spent a week and biked from New Hampshire to Burlington. Like up Smuggler's Notch, stopped at the Cabot Factory, stopped at Ben & Jerry's, and then another week was spent on the Appalachia Trail in the 100-mile wilderness, hiking through Mahoosic Notch with 14 and 15-year-olds who were powerhouses. They were like the fastest hikers at the time that I'd ever known. And so just like leaving that summer being so jazzed and enlivened of how can I do this for a career, and that led into leading at Camp Muskingum Nature's Classroom in Ohio. I did that for a fall season, doing team building and leading day hikes and night hikes, and that led into heading out to California, working at the Pali Institute as an outdoor educator, and that expanded my skill set to then qualify to be a wilderness therapy guide, which in college, I love being outside, but in terms of primitive skills and survival, that really wasn't me, and now I know how to bow drill. And yeah, so one thing leads to another, and you really you don't know what opportunities are gonna unfold, and what even as I did each position, I gained clarity and discernment into what exactly I wanted to do next, and what was or wasn't working, what was sustainable, what population did I want to work with, where did I want to be. So it just unfolds.
You're such a beautiful example of living presently. Truly, and I know that's probably a lot easier said than done. Like in the moment, sometimes it might not always feel that way. But can you tell people kind of like, what is that moment like when you maybe don't know what you're going to be doing in a month or maybe in a week, but an opportunity arises, and saying yes versus making the pros and cons list and like that not saying yes?
Oh gosh. Well, the practice of being present, it really is a practice. It's this constant pull back, and I drove about it last night, and I thought about it on the way here this morning, and just how real like this moment and how unreal any other moment in the past or whatever's going to happen in the future is, and having to be here. And I guess in the moments of uncertainty and unknowing, I think, I have a lot of privilege in being able to access and have jobs and even go to college where a bunch of it started. So, there is an immense amount of privilege in that. And, but I think the practice of being presence and gratitude, and kind of thinking back to what you were saying around context and perspective, when you've seen a familiar road, but you haven't been able to look at it, when you can step outside of your arena, you're able to then come back and appreciate it much more. And I, love to speak for my students in saying that that's what they noticed during our reflection and synthesis at the end of the program. A lot of them had a completely different idea of what home was. And I think, segueing into the power of travel at any age, but especially in the adolescent years, when you step outside of your community or your state or your country, what happens is transformational, because I think it's easy to get lost in our crap, or like our story can be empowering, but we can get stuck in, like what we know. And then when we step back and recognize that we don't know what we don't know, and that there's worlds and communities and peoples and cultures and all of these amazing things outside of this bubble, I think that stimulates a need and a thirst for growth and learning and stimulation. And not only do you then have appreciation for where you come from, and you have a whole new perspective on that street, but now you have this experience that you've done that, therapeutically, you've like cognitive behavioral therapy, when you've done something challenging, you've gone abroad as a 16-year-old and lived with a hosting family.
Can you clarify that for people that you're like where you're taking the students?
Yeah,
so that makes more sense to me.
Totally. So World Learning, the Experiment in International Living, leads over 30 programs in 26 different countries. And every program has a different specific theme. The one I led was South Africa, Social Change and Leadership. And it ranges from marine biology in Mexico, coast to coastal, Vietnam, learning about sustainability. There's a nomadic culture and outdoor adventure in Mongolia. And then all through Europe, South America, Tanzania, and so those are the programs. And the World Learning has been around for 86 years. It started in World War II, and they really kind of pioneered, because there's a lot of programs similar to this in the industry. And I think the big thing that I'm really proud to be working for this company is that the value of the intercultural exchange that is received when you do a homestay is astronomical, because you're not just going to a city or a country and seeing what's happening. You're living with a family, and
these are like 16-year-olds, right? You're taking them from
America,
the States, out of the country.
Yes, and vice versa. We have international programs that come here, and we do a similar program in the States. But specifically for today, the experiment going abroad. And I had first connected with this company when I studied abroad in South Africa doing a community health and social policy program, and I lived in KwaZulu-Natal in Cato Manor, which is a township outside of Durban, and I lived with the family for 7 weeks. So I learned how to, which is a huge part of being having that intercultural exchange. And was also able to live in the rural community, and just shout out to the families.
Yeah.
But when we were abroad, we learned Afrikaans. So the language I just spoke was Zulu, which is one of the 11 national languages of South Africa. Afrikaans is another one. And so we had Afrikaans lessons before we went into the community as a way to continue connecting.
Wow. Yeah.
And they're learning about, the families are learning about the students, and the students are learning about the families, and the students are learning about the other students. An intercultural exchange doesn't just happen across borders. It's, with people that are from, we had students from Kansas City, San Francisco, Miami, Key West, the Bronx, Manhattan, Chicago, Pennsylvania, just all across, all in one conglomerate group. And even just getting that group of students together to spend 5 weeks, but then taking that and in the context of being abroad,
So I want to talk about, so that hearing you talk it actually brings me back to Rico's podcast, where he's being a leader for the next generation of children. Granted, his age group seems to be a little bit younger, but I want to talk about how you're kind of in this very powerful, very impactful position in sharing with these kids an experience that's completely altered and changed your life, like travel. And oftentimes you're showing them something that's unseen. So you're giving them the ability to step into empathy and understanding and have more appreciation and gratitude for what they got back home. So you didn't just show up and magically have that ability, right? Like, so there's things that prepared you for that. And I want to selfishly go back to your Lakota Sundance tribe of women. I'm wondering, did that specifically have a huge impact in like giving you the ability to step up as that leader, or were there other experiences along the way that really helped prepare you? I mean, I'm not stupid, all of them helped prepare you, but what are the most impactful ones that really helped you be prepared to step into that leadership role and share and kind of guide these kids?
Yeah, 100%. The Lakota ceremony. So I attended in 2014, and then I attended in 2017, and I'll be attending this summer as well. And in 2017, we did a diversity training, and I think so we did the training, and it was really necessary because being able to start the conversation amongst this community that does so much healing work around race, and starting the conversation about race can be really challenging, and especially in the context of students, in the context of a different country, and even just in general, like that's not the first thing people want to talk about. And that, being part of this community and having sisters that I've been able to navigate a lot of really powerful conversations around whiteness and white privilege and race, colorism, identity, the list goes on. And I actually had an opportunity to move to Brooklyn, New York, and living in Brooklyn was a bigger culture shock than living abroad, because, and what I've, real quick, what is so powerful about South Africa for me is that they have very parallel experiences around classism, racism, the incredible wealth gap, and that's out on their sleeve. Like the people of South Africa, apartheid ended just over 20 years ago, and it's still a conversation. Whereas in America, we have all of those things, all of these challenges, huge, like unthinkable injustice in this country, and yet it's covered up and it's not talked about. And so I think being able to have those conversations and having done work around that to be able to then navigate and have those conversations with students is really important. So that diversity and equity.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you're bringing this up, because lately, so when I do Toastmasters, which is my practice, where I practice my speaking, we always say the Pledge of Allegiance. And for the last year, I have found myself, every time we get to the part where you say, for liberty and justice for all, I literally feel like rage rise in me. To the point where, like, I don't even want to stand up and say that. And maybe I shouldn't say that because of my white privilege, but it really, like, we're talking about building walls. We're talking, there's racism, like, there's all this stuff happening with just, like, black and white cops and this and that. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I think our police officers are an amazing job. They have an extremely hard job. If any one of us was put in that situation, what I fall on, I think it would be a little bit different, but it's still there. And I just feel like President Trump has actually been like a blessing, because he showed us what can stand no longer. And like, these are the conversations that need to be had, because I think we've moved so far away from that one statement, liberty and justice for all. And that's why I'm so comfortable having you on here, to have these conversations. I don't care if there's that. I don't care about any stuff. Like, I want truth, and that's why I want you guys. I'm hoping a bunch of you guys are watching this, because this is the stuff that needs to be heard if we are to change.
Yeah.
And I had a woman recently talk to me, like, it's actually my aunt, completely different context, but she was like talking about how there was this lady, she's like a big animal advocate. She's like, there's this lady, it was like 100 degrees, and then they were gonna leave like the dog in the car with the windows up, and she just was like, not in my reality. And she like said something, and like blah blah, they got in an altercation, but eventually the lady's like didn't leave the dog in the car. But it's the same thing, like, I'm so sick, this isn't my business. Everything that happens, it's your reality. So are you going to turn a blind eye, or are you going to like have that tough conversation, or are you going to stand up and have a voice for the person that doesn't have it?
Yeah.
You know, and I love that you're giving kids the ability and like the strength to be able to have those conversations and hopefully see that and maybe be like, hey, he deserves just as much a chance as you do.
And they're all giving me what they say and their voices and their knowledge and their understanding of what is going on is so clear and so real. And you know what plays a role in not wanting to have these conversations is vulnerability around not knowing, you know, not being educated, whether it be on the people's history of the United States, on your own ancestral lineage, on your privilege. And that's, you know, and it's to do that work and recognize that like we live, like the United States is a racist country, and thus because we grew up in it, we all have racial bias, and we all have aspects, you know, like it wasn't until I was in a women's studies, gender privilege and power class that I realized that I was racist. And being able to acknowledge, you know, because there's a huge emotional fear around what that even means. And Dr. Robin DiAngelo writes a fantastic book, White Fragility, on starting to navigate those conversations and those reflections of what are microaggressions and intent versus impact. Because you can have the well-intentioned to just be curious about someone, but asking where they're from, like the impact of that may not be nice. And so it's racism isn't just white cloaks. It's all of the just like automatic processing that goes on, and it takes unlearning. Wherever you were grown up, whatever family system, whatever part of the country, there's some sort of learning that occurred around race that it's everyone's responsibility to recognize and acknowledge. And most importantly, it's white people's responsibility to do it and not rely on people of color to start that conversation, because that's tokenized labor.
And then not only that, like, I think it's just so much about, like, those conversations are important, but I think a big piece of this podcast and just like what I'm doing in my life is like, none of that matters. Like, look at who the human is. Like, who are you here? Yeah. And like, can we get people to drop below the surface? I mean, it's really hard with the programming we've received our whole life to look below the surface of like who you are as a person. Yeah. You know?
I mean, I think we talked about this a little bit last night. I think it comes back to, yes, unlearning, but also learning. Like, and based on what Sean just said, like looking beyond the surface and recognizing that it's just another person, like that we're all just people. And kind of like what we talked about last night, it's like you're never going to be able to educate yourself about every single culture, every single community. Like, that's not possible. You're never going to know the right way to speak to every single person. And you're just never going to know the implications of every action you make. But you can go through your life offering kindness to every person that you meet. Like, I feel like that is the one thing that you can do, no matter who it is. Treat them kindly. And I think that is like within your own community as well. Like I was telling you last night, like I have a couple like insecurities about feeling like I maybe don't make sense to other populations with the work that I do. But knowing that the people that I do connect with in my community, like that's a tiny bit of a positive impact. Like you can't reach everybody.
Right. Well, how do you do both? How do you look beyond duality and look beyond the social constructs that have been created that aren't real? Like, they're not real. And also look at, you can't be colorblind either. Because to say that like, no, I don't see color.
That's offensive too. Yeah.
So not, because to not acknowledge someone's lived experience based on the systematic and institutionalized oppression that occurs, I mean, it's a tricky balance and it's consistently navigating, but it's, how do you connect with someone not for like, how do you do it? How
do you know what I want to do? Do you know what I want to do? Here's okay, this is gonna be mine. I want universe, I want the superpower. So I've seen this, and I guarantee a lot of our viewers, I'm sure you guys have seen this. There was blues in New York City that have this stage they set up, and they put up a giant X-ray machine. And people will go behind, and they're kissing.
Yes.
You don't have a clue if they're gay,
Yeah.
it's 2 men, 2 women, black, white, Asian, Mexican. It doesn't matter. So I wish I could just be like, boink, you see an X-ray? Boink, you see an X-ray? Boink. And then you get to be like, all right, well, there's no like surface level, like, oh, you're like really sexy, so I'm gonna treat you different, or oh, you're white, I'm gonna treat you different. It's just like, oh, what's up, skeleton?
Well, so
Who
if you
are you?
asked a skeleton where they're from, does that now become offensive? But that's where it starts to get confusing. I think also like we are also very highly sensitive as human beings now. So if you were to be skeletons right here and ask you specific questions, then that's still confusing. Because if I could see you, it would be offensive. But if I can't see what you look like, is it offensive?
and that goes back to rapport.
That's confusing.
Well,
Or like if I was on the phone with you.
well,
Where are you from?
But there's a difference between seeing
But
Skeleton.
as
someone
soon as I
else.
see you, it becomes more offensive. Like that's confusing, right?
So when you see someone on the street and you don't have a relationship with them, and
Yeah.
you just like recognize that maybe their hair is really curly, but they have lighter skin, and you're like, you know,
That's the
and
way you say it.
and it's the way you say it. It's also just being able to just build a friendship on humanity, and then if and when the time is right, ask questions and educate yourself, and begin and there is a lot of language around and wanting to be politically correct. I think is where that kind of insensitivity and insecurity of wanting to have those conversations, but starting with starting with someone of your color who can maybe help support this conversation, and then also again going back to educating yourself in order to have these conversations, and then and part of educating and the way I learn the most is experiential. So having conversations with my students and with people in my community, and really obviously Brene Brown,
Yeah,
Queen,
Dare leave.
the importance of building a relationship before you just give away those gold nuggets.
It's like you're in my head. That's what I was thinking, right? Like it's like connect with them on the human level, and then you like drop the wall to be able to like get into those other spaces, get into those vulnerable spaces. But if you're just like, oh, I've never met you, where are you from?
Yeah.
Okay, then it's like.
And there's kind of like a initial, oh hey, and it's again, it's the intention, and
You just have to be willing to be vulnerable and be wrong. I think is really all it is.
Yes.
Like you have to. It's like, are you willing to take a step and be like, oh, like
I was wrong.
I'm sorry, I didn't know. I wasn't trying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think people understand that. You know what I mean? If you're willing to be in that vulnerable place with people, right? Like, I mean, I say things wrong sometimes. Like, we've had this happen where I say wrong things. I'm like, oh, geez. Like, I think she understands now, knowing me, that like, okay, no, you're not trying to like be a jerk, but hey, like that didn't feel good. I'm like, oh, okay.
I think too, it kind of comes back to this conversation that we had before we even went live about like food. Like the news is going to tell you one week that avocados are really bad for you and you should not eat avocados because they give you cancer. But then next week they're going to tell you that you should be eating an avocado for every single meal. And then this is the exact same butter, I'm realizing the butter reference that you made, but with an avocado now. And then a week later they're going to say, okay, maybe like half of an avocado a day is like pretty good for you. But I feel like we don't give ourselves enough credit sometimes for being the smart humans that we are. Like, we probably knew in the moment that eating 10 avocados a day wasn't a great idea. We also probably knew that they weren't going to give us cancer. But like, subconsciously, we probably knew that like half an avocado a day is really good for us. Like that's pretty like normal, like that's average. And I think it comes back to the way we have these like honest conversations too. Like, just be as smart as you really are. Like, stop trying to like be something that you're not, and people can read right through bullshit, I feel like. So if you're just having an authentic conversation with another person, you're typically not going to offend anybody.
Being yourself and going back to kindness and going back to what's the intention and humility and presence and yeah.
Well, I think it's just like, do you want to lead from a place of like, I'm trying to understand? And again, people have a meter.
Right.
So like, if it's not about that, they know. You know?
Right.
And I think it's about leading from that place. But I want to kind of tie this back into like your kids. So do you have like maybe a specific example? Because I know you guys talked about on our first phone call about how you guys were impacted by some of these, I don't know if it was pause or maybe some other ones, where like you would go learn these principles and be able to bring them back to your community. So for me, I had to break down. I mean, I went on a plane the first time I was 23 years old. So I went to Portugal last year, Wildhearts Fest, AJ, awesome, Lauren. And that was such an impactful experience for me. And I didn't even get like really in the culture that much, but just the international travel, just doing those things, how impactful that is on the way you view things. Do you have some specific examples of like a group of students or one student where, you know, they went and saw this and lived with a family and like came back with like this huge impact and like brought that to the community?
Can I use an example from
Absolutely.
last month?
Yeah, absolutely. Please.
Okay.
Please do.
So last month, I was a group leader for the Youth Ambassadors Brazil program, and that's been going on since 2002. We had 50 participants, 2 adult mentors that were chosen out of 17,500 applicants.
Wow. And those applicants are from the States.
So all from Brazil.
Oh,
So there were
they're from Brazil.
17,500 Brazilian students that applied for this program. 50 were chosen.
Wow, that's just like, hit hard. Okay.
These students, I'm still digesting their infinite caliber. They arrived on January 11th, and in our first introduction to social justice and volunteerism, which was the theme, in the first section, they were going into nepotism and like just all these, like, we asked the question of creating like what would a socially just world look like, and they, you know, the 50 students divided into 5 groups of 10, and just witnessing all of the thoughts they had were unbelievable. And then flash forward to so we broke off into 4 groups, and a different group leader took the group of students to Reno, Nevada, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Seattle, Washington, and I took a group to Louisville, Kentucky. And then we went, lived with host families, did programming on this topic of social justice and volunteerism, and just engaged, you know, both with the community as well as this context. And when we got back to DC, we were doing the synthesis and reflection, or the host community debrief. And one student, I even have it a video, because he shared, his name was Kaio, and he shared that they were American, and they are, because they're from the Americas. And, you know, his empowerment of, you know, not only recognizing, a lot of them discussed how when they came over, they had this perception that America is perfect and it's great, and, you know, and while we do have immense access, we also have a lot of challenges as well. And so them learning that we have a lot of challenges that they have, and then being able to talk and discuss of what's being done in different communities, and, you know, what can you bring back to your community, which ultimately they do. So at the end of all these youth exchanges, the students create an action project to bring back into their communities. And, you know, and just, yeah, I mean, every single cohort of students I've worked with has been just mind-blowing and life-changing, and just all of their reflections, all of their learning, and it's not even just culturally, it's about themselves. It's them learning that they're strong, that they're beautiful, that it's okay to not get whatever grade, or just that so much of the pressure that they feel, to be able to bring it back to being present and to being grateful. And there's always, the grass is always greener, but just as hard to mow. There's always someone that has more or less, and like who are you, and who you are is beautiful, and your story is amazing, and how do you own that? And self-worth, self-esteem, that I think is such a huge core piece to then being able to feel comfortable not knowing about another race, not knowing about whatever conversation is happening, and you're like, oh, that if you have some inner strength and like an internal locus of validation, then
you won't be afraid to ask the questions when you don't know the answer. Exactly. Because I think that's a huge problem that so many people have, is that when they don't know the answer to a question, they just ignore it and continue to move on and don't educate themselves because of fear of asking that question. Like when you're in, I said this last night, when you're in high school and you don't know, like in like math class, you don't understand something, and then you're like, oh, I don't want to be that person that asked. But then that one kid finally asked the question, and the whole class like takes a deep breath and they're like, oh, I didn't get that either. But like nobody wanted to be the first person to ask that question.
Yeah.
And I feel like life too, like at least in my childhood experience and like teenage years and really a lot of my early 20s was like, it was honestly not about self-empowerment and realizing your power. I felt like it was the opposite for me. It was just this constant like beat down. And like that was just my experience. Like, and that's why I think it's so important to bring these programs where it's like, even at 9 years old, even at 10 years old, you literally as an individual, as a 9-year-old, have the power to change the world. Like I remember there's this kid on Instagram, he's like this little 8-year-old, like Les Brown, like Eric ET, like motivational speaker, and he's like, wait, man, like all this like self-esteem and confidence like coming at you in the mic. I'm like, whoa, I could be like, I want to do this.
Does that come back to like parenting or like?
I'm not sure.
It
it all has to do. Yeah, I mean, I think a major piece of it is conditioning, but it's also a major piece of it is this like faith of believing something different can happen.
But it's like, how do you know that at 9? Like, who's putting those thoughts in your head? So like, that's like the ultimate goal, right? Is to like kind of form kids' minds when they're that young, but clearly like, and that's not happening enough. So it's like, that's a great example. Like, look at that kid and say, where did this come from?
But I think we're born that way though.
Right,
it's
it's the people.
Contracts, yeah. So it's
right.
About
So as
everything.
adults, how do we, or as parents, or as teachers, like how do we jump on that sooner?
We do it together by having these conversations, by understanding these programs exist.
And obviously,
that's
what
great.
you're doing is just that.
Yeah.
I mean, the younger you can have exposure to anything, whether it's, I mean, if you learn a second language at 5, that's a lot easier than at 25.
Yeah.
And exposure to culture, to challenge, to suffering, to this, to anything. Parenting does make it like
Guidance.
Yeah, and preventative, I think so. There's all sorts of things that play into this, access to education, health determinants. If you can't learn if you don't have adequate nutrition, and then you're thinking, I'm applying to have to go to school for social work, and so I'm kind of like zooming out into this social work model of how there's so many things connected in gaining access to even just the possibility to challenge the status quo or challenge your reality. And yeah, I mean, parenting for sure. Who you are is the 5 people you're around. So who do you surround yourself? Are parents staying together? I mean, what does the household look like? And that, has all sorts of elements in terms of access and, yeah. I mean, the question you asked, I don't remember because there's so many components. But yeah, again, how do you just go back to the present moment and start with yourself and start with what can you do and maybe just choosing one thing. There's an 11-year-old that just went viral online talking about environmentalism. Hey, when I'm 74, my children are gonna have a place to live. Yeah. And it's clear, and the generation of youth right now recognize how pivotal it is to wake up and open our eyes and do the work and show up, because we're not gonna have a planet. It's huge.
Well, I think it's so I feel too now I'm recognizing a lot in my mid to late 20s that a lot of the work comes in kind of unlearning a lot of things that we have been conditioned to learn. And I think an interesting segue for this, actually, if you're comfortable talking about it, is so you were diagnosed with Lyme disease. Mm-hmm. Kind of maybe talk about how that. So we, as let's just say a society, have I don't know where this. We will get diagnosed with things and then we'll get medication to fix the problem. But you took a very different route for that, and I think a lot of that process for you was unlearning and digging really deep into a lot of things from your past and healing. Mm-hmm. So it's you maybe saw this diagnosis of Lyme disease as a very positive thing, and maybe not in the moment you were diagnosed, you were this is a positive thing, but looking back on it, you realize that maybe it was it was a very important thing that happened in your life.
Yeah. Abroad in South Africa, we learned different health models, and the health is a consciousness model in that, when we're sick, our bodies are manifesting something deeper, whether it's emotional, mental, spiritual, cultural, and it's, our bodies know. And when we listen, when we tap into, hey, or even look I consistently get, bronchitis, or I get throat-related illnesses, or I get gut, my stomach is out of tune. When we, Caroline Meese writes The Anatomy of the Spirit, she's a medical intuitive, of how so many medical diagnoses are connected to these deeper things. So yeah, I was diagnosed in 2009 when I was in high school, and then when I was in college, I got it again. And at this point, I really don't have a negative association with it at all, but it definitely, it destroyed my digestive system. I came into pause the second year having sensitivities to gluten, wheat, oats, barley, coconut, meat, dairy, soy, chocolate, red grape, basically everything acidic. And as, and just I ended up going on antidepressants when I was a freshman. And just my nervous system was out of whack, because that's what Lyme disease does. It attacks your nervous system and weakens your immune system. And when you're compromised, then it attacks. And so I was really, really, really fortunate that my dad was willing to fund for me to see a naturopath and start looking into Ayurvedic food, to look at, I actually worked with the Native American shaman and did some really deep, not only an herbal protocol that killed the Lyme, and I say killed, and technically I'll always have it, but I would not have been able to backpack for 8 days straight as a wilderness therapy guide if I had the symptoms I had in college. And so, and as I was doing this herbal protocol, and as I was doing Bikram yoga 5 to 6 times a week, because heat is really good for Lyme. They don't like the heat, and so I was giving myself a fever every single day. If I wasn't going to Bikram yoga, I was taking a really hot bath to try to get it out. And what was underneath the physical symptoms was that, I had some really deep traumas that occurred in my childhood that had an impact on my immune system, and being able to do some really deep healing work to identify that and do the healing around that has been able to strengthen my current body. Because when we have trauma from any part of our life, like, it does affect us. And yeah.
It was a very casual way of putting it.
Yeah, I know. It does affect us.
It really affects us.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate that, because I didn't know that part of your story, so I'm learning. But what I appreciate is just again, you have to believe something different happened, right? So, like, I don't know what the traditional way of treating Lyme disease is, but I can't imagine it's going to see a Native American shaman and naturopath. Like, so that's what I appreciate, because even I'll bring this to my own experience of mental illness. Like, I challenged the way I took it. I went after it completely holistically. Mm-hmm. And not to say I didn't use some aspects of Western medicine as tools along the way, but I mean, that's my challenge. I'm going to challenge all viewers. If you're dealing with some stuff, like, I'm sure there's a certain way you've been told how to fix it. Mm-hmm. I challenge you to look beyond that, because, like you said, like, am I getting all kinds of throat issues? Like, are you always sick? Like, your body's telling you something specific, and you have to be willing to, this is anything in life, you have to be willing to scratch much deeper than the surface if you want true, like, solutions. Yeah. Well, that's it too. But that's the toughest piece of it, right? Is because, like, human body, human mind, if it's in pain, you are looking for the absolute quickest escape. So that's where, for example, like, antidepressants and all these pharmaceuticals, that's why they thrive, because it's like, oh, I want the pain gone. Okay, well, here, let's just numb it. Thank you, done. And then you get addicted to it because they're highly addictive, and then it's just this repeated cycle. But deep down inside, there's still the issue, and it's not getting fixed. So I think that that's so valuable, and thank you for sharing. And that's your warrior. That's awesome. But yeah, that's my challenge to the viewers. Is like, hey guys, you got something going on, and feel free to reach out to, because we're trying to create a community, like, whether it's mental illness, Lyme disease, what else have we had? Anything, like, ask questions, reach out to these people. Like, that's what this is for, is we want to create these conversations. If it's a wrong race, I don't know. That's what it's for.
In order to create a paradigm shift, so when we have a paradigm of healthcare, of anything, in order to shift it, we need to recognize where we're at and what's going on. We need to know that there's another way to do it and to switch into it, and we need a stimulus for change. Mm-hmm. So for me, Lyme disease was a huge stimulus for change. Okay, I'm doing this casual thing, and freshman in college, and how do I like after that I stopped drinking an entire semester. I started attending Buddhism meditation at Aryaloka in Newmarket. I switched my diet. I shifted my friends, like the people who honored that I wasn't drinking, and then being able to still connect with me in a really deep, supportive way. Like, those are my best friends. I had a sleepover with that friend 2 days ago, Georgia. And and that shifted everything, and toppled onto all the other things I've done since then. And so when you have a stimulus for change, which may be depression or anxiety or whatever illness or a death in your family or whatever trauma, and I say trauma because it's really real and can also instigate a huge learning and growing.
And recognizing kind of that, I feel like I've been saying this a lot, but it keeps resonating with me. This idea that things aren't happening to us, they're happening for us, to lead us to a learning, a place of learning and experiencing. Like, what is that going to, like, where's your next magical divine timing from that thing that's happened.
And
From that
trust
trauma.
and trusting that when we're in flow, like when things are going well and we're doing good and we're expanding and growing, it feels really great, and it's easy to have trust in the universe and this and that. But actually, more trust and faith is needed, because when things aren't going right, that's communication. When you have a challenge with a friend, or a conflict with a parent, or when something's not in flow, it's like, okay, that's where the learning needs to happen.
Yeah, but I don't think you can look at it until you have, like you said, that perspective of like, this is happening for me. Like, that has given my life a tremendous amount of ease. Because now, like I oftentimes will be like it's that conflict, or I got sick or something's happening. It's just like, I kind of laugh. It's like a joke to me. I'm like, what am I supposed to learn now?
Another learning opportunity.
Yeah, I'm a sucker. And then like as I've developed like emotional language, and like just like onslaught sometimes. I get a break, and it's like, no, dude, it's emotion. It's like constantly flowing. So I think that's a powerful, because I mean, they say, is it your subconscious is 1,000 times more powerful than your conscious? So basically, I feel like oftentimes your subconscious is manifesting, whether it's a physical illness, whether it's a death, whether it's this conflict, to lead you to the healing. But oftentimes, like I was the big party guy for years. Like, I'm a quarantine. Oh my God, my sucks. I hate myself. Like all this stuff. And not to take away my family there, but that was just my little story. But like, if you can have this other perspective, it gives you a completely different way of looking at it. I'm not saying it's easy, because these things can be really challenging, but if you can, like, that's the faith piece of it. Like,
That's what makes you strong.
okay, like, I don't understand this right now. I'm gonna have patience. I'm gonna keep taking actions to move forward, and I'm gonna have confidence that they're gonna lead to the answer, or to a solution, or to the right person, or to the next opportunity, whatever it is. And I think that that's an extremely powerful viewpoint in life.
You need little successes.
Oh yeah.
You need moments that you're like,
Moments.
I was able to move through that. I was able to get through that really hard time. And and when we step outside of our comfort zone and show up, to be authentic to where we're really at, and not just have an issue and then numb it with whatever addiction it is. Then we can start there. And it's life can be beautiful and it can be brutal.
I mean,
brutal, and that's, we don't have to get into the conversation of what life is, but
well, I mean, Osho says, Don Miguel Ruiz says it, before drinks, like, you are your creator of your own heaven or your own hell. Like, not just gonna be real blunt, like, that is the truth, 100%. Sometimes there's stuff that happens beyond your control, but you always have an opportunity to not react, but like decide how, like, what you're gonna choose to move forward with. And I think that that's super powerful, because I don't think a lot of us realize, like, we have that power. And you know what? Sometimes, I talk to my kid about this. Sometimes I just want to, like, sulk and be sad and be angry. And I know I'm consciously choosing that, but sometimes I feel scared, and that's okay.
And to consciously be angry, experience your emotion, it's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
It's more than okay.
Yeah, like, I don't need to just put a gratitude sandwich on top of it. Like,
of course.
I just want to be effing angry.
Yeah.
And now I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm
Last week
that,
I was really angry, and it was really, and actually that, you can express yourself fully, like, and again, it's, how do you be angry and not project it and take it out on someone, but the importance of being angry, because there's a lot of frustrating, angry, like, aggravating things that occur, and change is a constant. The one thing we have is, like, how we respond to situations. And so how can we be present?
I think off of that, can you talk about anything? So an important part of this podcast for us too is to obviously share the really amazing things that people are doing in their lives, but also kind of touch upon the struggles and, like, the fears that are going on.
Yeah.
Like to keep it as real as possible. Like, is there anything that you have going right now that's like a big fear, something that you're struggling with?
Of course. Well, I think, it's really easy to see like, oh, I'm traveling and leading trips and doing this, and that's amazing, really, truly. And I'm trying to navigate how to make it sustainable, because it's not. Like being gone every other month is not sustainable. It's not routine. Even, I worked the whole weekend in New Hampshire, and then I came to your house, and then I'm staying, and it's like I'm going all the time. And so for me, like tapping into what do I really want to do, and where do I need to be, and what am I doing? In terms of insecurities, on program, I was stressed and I was reaching towards sugar, because that's a coping mechanism that's totally unsustainable. And, I broke my wrist a couple of months ago, and so I haven't been able to do as much cardio as I'm used to. And so I felt the impact of that. And it was such a practice to be gentle with myself and to accept things that are out of my control, and whether it's body image, whether it's finances, I haven't made more than $30,000 a year since I've graduated, and I wouldn't trade that. I have been able to do amazing things, and I'm really content. But yeah, finances would be great. I'm working on that. Also, I've done a lot of work. For a long time, I struggled with relationships in my family, and I really took on healing those and transforming those. And yeah, when we can stand in the possibility of what we want to create, it's just one step towards creating it.
Well, I think I just to finish up that point is I think so oftentimes we have, especially as millennials, have grown up in this age of instant gratification, correct? So it's we talk about this all the time, about getting that instant validation, right? And when you don't, it's really easy to quit. But you talked about having an internal sense of validation. And I think that's where the really magical, beautiful things happen is, guys, you're not always going to get validation. And to be perfectly honest, the only validation you should really be looking for is your own. And that's how you move forward in those difficult times. When you have a business and you're 3 months in and you have negative $158, but you're like, all right, let's just keep going. You have, again, I keep saying it in this podcast, you have to believe something different. You have to believe that you are supported by this universe and that it will work. And that has to come from in here. You can't be constantly seeking it outside of yourself. That's okay sometimes, but I think it's really much more powerful to receive it from yourself.
I think a really good practice for people too is something that I've been personally working on is every time you reach for your phone, say to text somebody or to call somebody, because you may not even realize that it's validation that you're searching for, but every time you go to call somebody just out of pure needing to hear somebody else's voice, or maybe you just had a hard conversation, or you're feeling a little self-conscious about something and you just go to text somebody just to get that message back is validation in itself. So practice not picking up your phone. And practice, I'm picturing myself in the car, practice it throwing it in the passenger seat, not while driving, Wildhearts, and just throwing it over there, not making that message, just sitting with how you are feeling on your own.
And even to add to that, because I think that's amazing, is to be what do I want to hear? What would I want to hear on that phone call? Why not try and say it to yourself? Because we all have a little inner kid in there. I'm a 30-year-old going on 5, but there's an inner child in here. There's an inner Micayla, inner Shanti. It's you have to practice. This has been part of my work in healing is there is still a little kid in there. When you're when someone says something, that's the little 5-year-old you, and it's what does he need to hear? And I'm a part of you talk about that circle. I really like it because I'm a part of a men's circle, part of the Mankind Project, and we do a lot of work with this where it's okay, like you're having this tough thing. What does 5-year-old Sean need to hear? And why don't you say that to him? And it's like,
I have a question for you off of that, kind of like on putting you on the spot, but I asked all the women this last night at the workshop, and I think it's a great question. It's kind of two parts. The first part is, what would you say to a young girl today, something that she could do every day to remind herself that she is beautiful, that she is loved, that she is enough?
Oh, I love.
That's part one. That's part one.
Okay. Answer part one.
I can be the girl.
Are you doing gender stereotypes by doing your little hack?
100% yes. Social conditioning. But let's just go with it.
I was like, ask your advice.
I would take a deep breath. I would look into the mirror, and I would find 3 things that I love about myself and about yourself, and focus on those 3 things. And that part of you, that little part of you, it's just a part. And actually, real quick, so emotional freedom tapping is a technique where you can kind of tap out and physically look at a challenge, and even though a part of me feels insecure, I completely love and accept all aspects of myself, and like repeating that. And whether it's just kind of like tapping your body just to kind of ground yourself in this space, and then finding those things you love about yourself. And that's connected to research and gratitude. So I'm grateful for these things about my life, and I love this part about my body, and maybe I don't like the other part, and that's okay.
Yeah. I don't need to ask her.
I think,
Curious.
I think talking about that, like we talk about gratitude, and oftentimes we think about like all the good stuff. Guys, there's a piece of gratitude where like, I'm grateful for this anger.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for this insecurity I'm having right now.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for my small calves that I'm insecure about because they make me really fast, but they don't look jacked. That's mine. That just came out.
Yeah,
anyway, there you go, guys.
Well, and I think,
but
the part 2 of the question that I wasn't going to ask, but then I decided to share, was that the part 2 of the question was, are you doing that for yourself right now? And
I'm doing my best.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people, I learned last night, have this imposter syndrome where you can give the advice, and I'm so guilty of this sometimes too, but it's like you can give the advice, you can come up with a thing that you can say to that girl so that she can grow into this like beautiful person who loves herself unconditionally, but we find ourselves saying that and not always like doing that for ourselves.
All right.
that was loud.
When I was on program and I was feeling that way, I recognized that I had some really amazing students open dialogues with me about their body. And then when I was feeling it, I was super thankful, recognizing that this was an opportunity to walk the talk and to sit here in that moment of like, I'm grateful for I'm grateful for my belly and all that it's able to provide. I'm grateful for my body that I can climb and summit a mountain. And and so just being grateful for the challenges that are coming up, and it's like, whoa, this is so much, and I'm learning so much, and it's crazy. And so I'd say I'm doing my best to do that as often as possible. And we all fall into traps, and
But I think there's one. So we went to an event. I can't remember what it's called. No, it's good. I'm very well aware. We always have like 10 last minutes. We just start like blurting them as fast as possible. Yeah. So one more last, and then she's got last, and then but more, and that's good. That's happening. But I did want to give a shout out to Nick Marabella. A couple weeks ago, he talked at like some networking event over at Martin.
Tuesdays together.
And he gave a talk. And in that talk, it showed this like 80-year-old man staring into the mirror, but it's like the 23-year-old version of him looking like a stud. And he really just pointed to this principle of like, hey man, I've made it 80 years, right? Like I am like a rock star, and like this is how I view myself. And you know, we all have a morning routine. My morning routine is super important to me. I have not done it in like 2 weeks because like I've been on the run constantly. But what I do have is like I have to brush my teeth every morning, no matter what. That has happened. So on my mirror, I have a big yellow think of the yellow notepad that says "I am proud of the man you are today." And because I can tell you, it's not always rainbows and ponies in that dome peace of mind when I wake up. So it's nice to just be like, even if I like don't want to believe it, I'm like, okay, you put that there for a reason. Like, yeah, I'm proud of the man you are, like who you are, where you're at, the conversations you have, the work you're doing, your body, all of it, you know. And I think that that's just if you can implant, and I'm not saying everyone has to do that one, but like implant these places where you can help yourself, because it's a practice, you know. And there's days where you don't want to believe that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's like sometimes just getting ahead of it, prior preparation prevents piss poor performance. So,
Well, we do have to wrap up.
Yeah.
We have,
Just so you know, for anyone interested in either donating or applying to the experiment, applications are still going, and the enrollment process is ongoing. So feel free to look up theexperiment.org. It's in international living. The programs are absolutely phenomenal. Last year we gave out $2.4 million in scholarships, and yeah, these programs are really incredible. So those who are interested in participating or donating, please go for it.
We'll tag Shanti in this if you want to get in touch.
Yeah, feel free to.
She's new onto Instagram.
I made an Instagram 2 months ago.
What was your
Scott_Shanti. And yeah, feel free to reach out.
Yeah. Awesome. And on that note, what does it mean to have a wild heart to you?
It means to listen and be accepting and loving and generous with whatever comes up within that heart. And to go for it, to say yes.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And
that was such a
perfect
good way to
example
end.
of that.
Great. All right, guys.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you guys so
for tuning
much.
in. Have a great rest of your week.
Happy
And
Monday!
Do these things. Finish.
okay, let's
You
save
think about
it this
finish.
time.
And live. Whew.